Okay, so this is going to be the second recording that I'll be posting on Hamlet. We covered Act 1, Scene 1 in the last video, and this video is going to be concentrating on Scene 2, and probably only Scene 2. It's an important scene, and upon reflection, I'm thinking that these videos, when they start going for an hour or more, they're just getting a little too long, a little hard to concentrate on the entirety of it. So I'm going to try to start doing shorter videos, just more of them. All right, and that way you can watch them in smaller chunks. And of course, then we'll discuss elements from the videos when we have our virtual classes. So just a couple of preliminaries. You'll notice with the text that I'm using in these videos may not, I've already mentioned this, but I want to mention it again just so we're all clear on it. You'll find that it may not correspond directly with the text that we're reading from the Signet Classic. It's because there were multiple texts of Hamlet, editors got involved, so there's a lot of scholarly work involved in putting together what was considered the definitive Hamlet. So we'll probably encounter a few of these in this video where the words might be different than the ones that are in your text. If it's of what I consider to be of great importance, we'll talk about it. But don't be put off by that. The gist is still all there. Okay, so let's go right into it. Right, so we finished up, as you recall, in Scene 1. There was a lot. Again, these first couple of scenes are very important because it is truly laying down a foundation from which everything is going to evolve. And we saw that the first scene was dealing with the appearance of the ghost of Hamlet's father. And Bernardo and Marcellus had brought Horatio there because they had seen it previously, and they brought Horatio to confirm. Horatio being a scholar, someone who might be more in a better position to assess its meaning. And what was really coming out of this is there's disruption. There's a disruption to the natural order of things, with the ghost appearing, especially the ghost being the ghost of the former king of Denmark. Okay, you can review that in the previous video, what we went over in more detail. So when we get to Scene 2, we're in Elsinore, a room of state in the castle. And here we're going to remember, it's always, I've mentioned this many times, but it's always vitally important to, okay, yeah, let's see. It's always vitally important to be attentive to who's there. Okay, so we've got a lot of people here. This is, it's a meeting room in the castle. The king is there, the new king, the king who is, in fact, the brother of the dead king, right? Claudius. And he starts off with quite a lengthy monologue here, and he covers a lot of different things. To be attentive to a number of things in this opening monologue, which we'll go through in detail, in terms of the manner in which he shifts the focus, and he goes on. He's obviously the king, so everyone has to defer to him, but how he's in control. He's in control of what they're going to be talking about. He's in control of the whole room, right? And that's his prerogative as king. But as we're going to find out, how legitimate a king is he? And how is Hamlet going to be responding to this situation that his father, who is only 2 months dead, is now the king, is now his uncle. And of course, there's the question of, well, why didn't Hamlet become king, since Hamlet was the son of the previous king? All right, and so there's all these questions of the legitimacy of Claudius to being king, and some of that will be, I think, revealed here. So, though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death, the memory be green, the memory is fresh, and that it is us befitted to bear our hearts in grief, and our whole kingdom to be contracted in one brow of woe. He's talking. We're all sad. The king is dead. The memory of him and the memory of his death is fresh, and it's of course natural for us all to be concerned and sad. Yet so far hath discretion fought with nature that we, with wisest sorrow, think on him. All right, so it's a bit of a commemoration. Here's gathered all these people, the attendants are there, lords and attendants. It's a big chamber. We're talking about, yes, we're all still remembering, upset over the death of the previous king, together with remembrance of ourselves. Therefore, our sometime sister, now our queen, now of course he's referring to Gertrude. Gertrude, his sometime sister, because Gertrude was married to his brother. So Gertrude was his sister-in-law. So sometime sister was my sister, now our queen, because he's married her, right? The imperial jointress to this warlike state have we, as 'twere with a defeated joy, with one auspicious and one dropping eye, with mirth in funeral, and with dirge in marriage, in equal scale weighing delight and dole taken to wife. Okay, he's what he's talking about here, and he's addressing the issue that, it's been 2 months, and he's already married. He's already married the former wife of the dead king. So we have these juxtaposition, almost oxymoronic juxtapositions here, right? The mirth in funeral and the dirge in marriage. Of course, he's talking about how they conflated. Here we were in mourning, and the funeral for our king who is dead, but at the same time we have the joy of a marriage. All right, and that in equal scale, weighing delight and dole taken away. So in this mixture of grief over the death of the king, we also have this joy in this marriage, and a queen for taking the wife as the queen to the king for the state of Denmark. Nor have we herein barred your better wisdoms, which have freely gone with this fair along. Now, this is a bit important, because the idea that he would marry his recently dead brother's wife has a certain incestuous suggestion to it, and would have been frowned upon at the time. You don't marry your brother's wife, because that, as he even says himself, sometimes sister. But here what he's revealing to us, and again, it's important to be attentive to the details, your better wisdoms, nor have we barred your better wisdoms. Who's the your? His advisors, right? The people that a king surrounds himself, those people of state who advise him. Your better wisdoms, your advice, which have freely gone with this fair along. You are in agreement and have potentially even advised me to marry Gertrude. Okay, so he's in a sense legitimizing this marriage to Gertrude, which would have been frowned upon by many in this society. So in order to address this in a political manner, right, he's king, he is saying, this was approved by my advisors, and not only necessarily approved, but the suggestion is they even advised it. For all our thanks, right? You all freely have gone along with this affair, and for all our thanks. And then, boom, quick shift. Now follows, right? So he's addressed the first issue, which is, yes, we're still, sad about the death of the king. And I just want to remind you that I married his wife, but that was with the advice of my advisors, so that is legitimate. And now continuing the political theme, right? He goes, now follows that you know young Fortinbras, holding a weak supposal of our worth, or thinking by our late dear brother's death our state to be disjoint and out of frame. Now, you remember Fortinbras, right? Because he was brought up in the first scene. Fortinbras is looking to avenge his father's death. His father was killed by Hamlet's father, right? Again, this is all in the first video when we looked at the first scene. And as a result of that battle, Fortinbras' father was king, and Denmark, the king of Denmark, who was Hamlet's father at the time, took land from Fortinbras' father. And now Fortinbras, what he's revealing here, that young Fortinbras is looking at us, all right, thinking our worth, okay, because our strength, if you will, is weakened because of the death of the previous king, and that our state is to be out of frame, disjointed, right? Fortinbras is going to make a move to get the lands back, right, and to avenge his father's death, and he's taking advantage of this particular time because he's thinking, anticipating that it's a bit chaotic here because of what has transpired over the last 2 months. And of course, it is chaotic. We got that sense in the first scene with, you know, this whole disruption and disruption of things by the appearance of the king and all the references to nature and so on, showing things out of joint. So Fortinbras is planning to come and get his revenge and to take those lands back. Colleagued with this dream of his advantage, he hath not failed to pester us with message importing the surrender of those lands, right, the lands lost by his father, with all bonds of law, to our most valiant brother. Okay, so he's basically, he's going to try and come. He doesn't have a right to, but we have to be alerted to the fact that Fortinbras could be on his way. So much for him. Now for ourselves, and for this time of meeting, thus much the business is. We have here writ to Norway, right? That's where Fortinbras comes from. We have writ to his uncle, the uncle of young Fortinbras, who, impotent and bedridden, his uncle of Fortinbras, who is the king of Norway, is bedridden and scarcely hears of his nephew's purpose to suppress his further gate inherit. He doesn't know what Fortinbras is up to here. So I'm writing to him. All right, I'm going to alert Fortinbras' uncle that, you know, he better get an eye on Fortinbras. In that the levies, the lists, and the full proportions are all made out of this subject, and we here dispatch you, good Cornelius, and you, Voltman, for bearers of this greetings to old Norway. I'm sending these two guys with this letter and sending it to Fortinbras' uncle in Norway, letting him know what's going on and that he better get it under control. We don't need this trouble, okay? Giving to you no further personal power to business with the king more than the scope of these dilated articles allow. You're just to go there solely to deliver the message and deal with this issue. Farewell, and let your haste commend your duty. Note, you know, duty, because duty becomes a recurrent theme here, and who has loyalty and duty to their king and to the concept of revenge, etc. You'll see how that unfolds. And Cornelius and Voltman in that, and all things we will show our duty. The king, we doubt it nothing. Heartily farewell. And they leave. They're bringing the message to Norway. All right. Now, another shift. Again, this is all coming from Claudius's speaking in front of his, in his kingdom and to his advisors, lords, and attendants, and so on. He's taking care of business, right? This is what this is about. Time for business. Let's settle the state, the business of the state and other things, because now he turns to Laertes, right? Who is Laertes? Remember, always feel free to run back up to your dramatist persona to see who is who. All right, they're all here. So we know that Laertes is son to Polonius. Okay, and here's Polonius, he's Lord Chamberlain. Doesn't give us that much. Most importantly here is to understand that Laertes is the son of Polonius, and he's Lord Chamberlain. He's a lord within the kingdom of Denmark. Okay, how significant is that? Well, that's what we come down here. We're going to find out through the play. But he turns his attention now to Laertes. What's the news with you? Okay, well, you're here. I think you want to ask me something. You told us of some suit. What is it, Laertes? You cannot speak of reason to the Dane and lose your voice. What wouldst thou beg, Laertes? That shall not be my offer, not thy asking. Well, whatever. It's demonstrate a good relationship. What were you asking for? That, of course I'm. Unless it's completely outrageous, of course I'm going to grant your request. You're here to ask me about something. What is it? What can I help you with? That shall I offer, not thy asking. The head is not more native to the heart, the hand more instrumental to the mouth. It's emphasizing their close relationship. Then is the throne of Denmark to thy father. Now we see it's mainly the relationship with his father, who we know is Polonius. Okay, we just checked that. What wouldst thou have, Laertes? And Laertes responds, "Dread my lord." It's referring. It's a way to address the king. Your leave and favor to return to France, from whence, though willingly, I came to Denmark to show my duty to your coronation. I came back from France. I live in France. I came here to do my duty, to be here when you were crowned king. Yet now I must confess that duty done, you are king. My thoughts and wishes bend again towards France and bow them to your gracious leave and pardon. I want to go back to France, is basically what he's saying. Okay? And I need your permission to do so. And the king immediately says, have you your father's leave? What say Polonius? That's important here because it's only scene 2. So we are being introduced to a number of characters. All right, and it can get confusing. That's why we go slowly, and we need to run back to the the list of characters at times to make sure we know who's who and what's going on the stage. So Polonius, Laertes' father, says, he asked, what says Polonius? In other words, okay, you're asking me as king to give you permission to go back to France. Well, what does your father say about this? All right, so the importance of the father. And this, of course, plays into the numerous father-son relationships here. Excuse me. And you want to be attentive to this because the father-son relationships is a major theme throughout the play, right? So here we know we have Hamlet and his relationship with his father, right? We know this early on. We know they have Fortinbras, who is coming for revenge as a response to his relationship with his father. And now we have another father-son being introduced to us, Polonius and Laertes. And Polonius responds, he has, my lord, wrung from me my slow leave by laborsome petition, and at last upon his will I sealed my hard consent. I do beseech you, give him leave to go. Yes, we've talked about it, and I don't want him to leave. I like having him around, but I understand why he wants to go back to France. King says, take thy fair hour, Laertes, time be thine, and thy best graces spend it at thy will. I give you permission. Yes, you can go back to France. And then we have another fairly abrupt shift in terms of the focus of this grand meeting in the castle. And it's Hamlet. But now, my cousin Hamlet and my son, because now he has married his mother. Okay? And Hamlet always attentive to these asides, right? So this is Hamlet turning to the side, so that no one else on stage can hear him. He's revealing to us, an audience, his thoughts, right? Anytime you see an aside, that's more often than not what we're to take from that. Mainly, it's that no one else hears him say it on stage. A little more than kin and less than kind. All right, so this is alerting us to, yeah, he's not too pleased by the way that the king, his uncle, is referring to him as his son. And again, this is important. This is our first introduction to Hamlet. And we know the play is obviously focused on Hamlet. So we learn a lot about his character here, or certainly his character and state of mind at this time. And the king says, how is it that the clouds still hang on you? And, okay, because that alerts us, the clouds still hang on you. Hamlet is brooding, right? He doesn't seem too happy, okay? And they're still hanging. It's understandable that he's not happy. His father just died 2 months ago. But it's the suggestion is, why are you still so down? Not so, my lord, I am too much in the sun. All right, so he's punning and playing with this son to son here, right? And he's saying, oh, that's not true. I'm much too in the sun, saying it as if I'm in the sunlight, so how could I be brooding? But of course, he's mocking the king to some degree, for the king having referred to him as my son. And here the queen gets involved. This is Hamlet's mother. Good Hamlet, cast thy nighted color, nighttime. Hamlet is all dressed in black. Black, initially, he's mourning, right? But it's been 2 months. But this alerts us to, because remember, we don't have that narrator to tell us what they're dressed as, how they look. We have to glean that from these, from the words that are being spoken by the characters, for the most part, occasional stage directions. Cast thy nighted color off. And of course, it's nighted color referring to what he's wearing on the surface, the appearance, right, of dressed in black, but the cast thy nighted color off, also, you know, that mood, right? You have a dark mood. So cast that mood away. But it's also, and this plays into so much of the emphasis in the play on appearances versus what is inside. Okay, keep that in mind. And let thine eyes look like a friend on Denmark, Denmark being the king. King is often referred to as the actual country. Do not forever with thy veiled lids seek for thy noble father in the dust. You know, don't, you know, your father's in the dust. You know, it's basically the gist here. It's time to get over this. Thou knowest 'tis common, all that lives must die, passing through through nature to eternity. Okay, and notice again, because we see this a lot in Shakespeare and the punning, right? As he did son and son, knowest 'tis common, all that lives must die, passing through nature to eternity. It's a common thing, right? Cycle of life. Aye, madam, it is common. Now, the way he's using the word common here takes it into more of a class distinction, if you will, in terms of behavior, because we're going to see as he starts he's not happy with his mother because he thinks that, first of all, his mother didn't wait long enough, and, you know, it's only been 2 months, and other reasons which will become evident as we go through. So, aye, madam, it is common, is the way that usually we would interpret how he's saying it. Common, yeah, you're common. You're like everyone else. You're not living up to your status as my father's wife, as my mother. You're behaving like a commoner. You know, you just, and why? Because you how could you move so quickly on, right? And are you, you know, and why did you move so quickly on? If it be, why seems it so particular with thee? She doesn't understand how Hamlet is mocking her here. And she says, yes, if it be common and you understand that it's common, it happens all the time, then why seems it so particular with thee? Why, we're all getting over it. We're all moving on. Why are you still mourning? Why are you still so uptight? Okay, why is it so particular with thee? And of course, it's why seems it so particular with thee? Why does it seem? You seem to be still very upset. Now, the key here is seem, because Hamlet jumps on this. Seems, madam, nay, it is. I know not seems, because seems doesn't suggest any kind of absolute understanding, right? Oh, you seem to be upset would suggest, but you may not be. And Hamlet is almost offended by this. Seems, what, you think I'm putting on an act? Seems, madam, nay, nay, it is. I know not seems. 'Tis not alone my inky cloak, right? That's his black garb, what he's wearing. Good mother, no customary suit of solemn black, nor windy suspiration of forced breath, no, nor the fruitful river in the eye. Right? He's talking about all these elements that people can see as indications of his very gloomy and mourning state, right? River in the eye, the crying, nor the dejected behavior of the visage, his face, together with all forms, moods, shows of grief that can denote me truly. All these things you can see, right, that indicates that I seem to be distraught. You can't know that from what you see on the surface. These indeed seem to indicate that I'm still grieving. And they seem because for they are actions that a man might play. Okay. It only seems to you because it could be an act. You're judging me by the surface. You don't know how I truly feel. And I'm insulted by the fact that you use the word seems, suggesting what? You think I'm play acting, right? The idea of playing, all right? You don't think this is sincere, okay? And this, again, becomes a theme that you want to be attentive to, right? The idea of putting on appearances and acts, which is, of course, very common, popular in politics, right? You're going to put on, look like this. And of course, once we understand and we see more of what's going on in the story, we're going to see how many people are acting, pretending, deceiving, hiding your inner thoughts from others is all over this play, right? And again, we'll see as we delve deeper into it, and it goes into multiple layers. For they are the actions that a man might play, as in a play, as in the theater, right? But I have that within which passeth show these but the trappings and the suits of woe. But I have within me something that is much deeper than anything you could possibly understand by the way I'm behaving or by what I'm wearing. Okay, so it's informing us of Hamlet's, awareness and sensitivity towards his mother, towards the situation, and that he has deep thoughts, right? He has, and we're going to see this really unravel at times throughout this play, that, Hamlet thinks everything through, often arguably overthinks things. It's one of the things, another theme here in terms of action, taking action, as opposed to trying to figure out what is the best action. Ultimately, you have to take action, but if you're thinking too much about it, often you don't act. Because, well, I don't know if that's the best thing to do, or is that the best thing, or is that, 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 and you become stagnant. And that's, this is when he says here, but I have that within which passeth show. I have something within me that is much deeper than anything you'll see for show. And it's alerting us, and we're going to see this in this scene when Hamlet starts, engaging in that kind of deep, deep thought. Now here, the king is listening to this, and King is, again, King, smart guy, right? We're still wondering, we should be, how come he became king? Wouldn't Hamlet have been the king? Isn't that the natural progression? The son becomes, we don't know yet, okay? But we're learning, and we're beginning to understand who this king is. And we've seen him handle the state. He handles a lot of things. He seems to, he's a very elegant speaker, and very much in control of things. So here he responds, "'Tis sweet and commendable in your nature, Hamlet, to give these mourning duties to your father." It's really, it's sweet and commendable that you're grieving for your father's death. I mean, no one's going to take that away from you. You're entitled to do that. But you must know your father lost a father. That father lost his, and the survivor bound in filial obligation for some term to do obsequious sorrow. Okay, what's he saying here? He's saying, I understand that you're grieving, but and it comes back to what Gertrude was saying, right? This is the cycle of life. Your father lost a father, and he lost a father, and so on and so forth. I mean, at some point you got to move on. But to persevere in obstinate condolement is a course of an impious stubbornness. Right now, he's berating Hamlet. He's chastising him. He's criticizing him. But to persevere, to continue in this obstinate grief, right, condolement, is a course of impious stubbornness. You are being stubborn, and the impious now is bringing in, this religious dimension. 'Tis unmanly grief. It shows a will most incorrect to heaven, a heart unfortified, a mind impatient, and understanding simple and unschooled. That's some heavy criticism. He's basically saying, I understand, yeah, you're grieving for him, but you're taking this way too far, and your behavior now is unmanly, it's stubborn, it is incorrect to heaven. You are dissing heaven, i.e., religion and God. You have an unfortified heart, an impatient mind, and an understanding that is simple, not educated, unschooled. Now, he's saying this, remember the context, he's saying this in front of the lords and attendants in this big hall. And we have to think, is it important that they all hear this or not? This would come down to the staging. How do you do this scene? But I would certainly entertain the possibility that he is saying it very much for everyone there, as a reminder, in case some are wondering what we've been wondering, why didn't Hamlet become king? Well, if he's unmanly, incorrect to heaven, unfortified heart, impatient mind, and his understanding of things are simple and unschooled, doesn't sound like someone who would be in a position to be able to handle things of state in the position of a king. In any case, I mean, it covers both. So, because we saw how he was referring, right? The king was referring to his advisors having, advised him and been on board with him marrying Gertrude, which, he knows some people might say, maybe you shouldn't have married her so soon. And now this could be a way that he's addressing the issue that some people may be going, why are you king and not Hamlet? Well, he's taking advantage of this opportunity with Hamlet, with what he said in his exchange with his mother, to really call him out and say, you're basically, you're being an idiot, is what he's saying. For what we know must be, and it is as common as any the most vulgar thing to sense, why should we in our peevish opposition take it to heart? Fie, 'tis a fault to heaven. You are faulting heaven, a fault against the dead. You're disrespecting the dead, and a fault to nature. You're disrespecting nature, to reason most absurd, whose common theme is death of fathers. Your continued grief, melancholy is disrespecting the dead. It is contrary to nature, and it is against heaven slash religion slash God. And who still hath cried from the first course till he that died today? This must be so. This is again, and there's a legitimate argument here, of course, in perhaps a different context. The idea being in a religious context, well, he's dead, and now he's in heaven, and by you not following proper protocol in terms of how one grieves and then moves on and gets on with their life, you're disrespecting him. And it's you're not allowing things to run their natural course. We pray you throw to earth this unprevailing woe and think of us as a father, right? So here's, King Claudius, the king, playing out and trying to control and to some degree manipulate the situation. Stop this way overblown mourning for your father and think of us as father. For let the world take note, and this is again the political ploys, right? This whole scene too here with the king. We learned so much about his maneuvering and his political machinations. For let the world take note, you are the most immediate to our throne. He's proclaiming this again in front of his audience, these lords, attendants, all these important people. He is proclaiming that I'm making it official. You are next in line. You are my heir. You will be the next king. So again, in the context of him concerned about some people saying, why isn't Hamlet king? Well, he absolutely destroys him, and calls him an idiot, and then turns on a dime and now says, but call me father, and I want everyone to know that you will be next in line for the king, and with no less nobility of love than that which dearest father bears a son, and I love you as if you were my son. Do I impart toward you. For your intent in going back to school in Wittenberg, it is most retrograde to our desire. All right, so that tells us something. He's saying you're thinking of going back to school in Wittenberg. That's a college. So this tells us that Hamlet goes to Wittenberg for school and is thinking of going back to school. And we have to sense, because we saw with Laertes, he came here for the funeral and the coronation and the wedding. And he's saying it would be most retrograde to our desire. We don't want you to go back to Wittenberg, and we beseech you, bend you to remain here in the cheer and comfort of our eye, our chiefest courier, cousin, and our son. I don't want you to go back to Wittenberg. We want you to stay here with us. The we is referring to, of course, the queen, who is Hamlet's mother. And she chimes in here. Let not thy mother lose her prayers, Hamlet. I pray thee, stay with us. Go not to Wittenberg. And Hamlet, okay, we don't know what he's really thinking, but he responds at this request not to go back to Wittenberg. I shall in all my best obey you, madam. Okay, I'll stay. All right, but of course, this is right after he gave his big speech about scenes. So it already posits that suspicion about, what's he really thinking. And the king would say, why, 'tis a loving and fair reply, be as ourself in Denmark. Madam, come. This gentle and unforced accord of Hamlet sits smiling to my heart. I'm pleased. And he should be pleased because he controlled, everything that transpired here, and he's feeling great. He's married and whatnot, and now Hamlet's going to stick around, which is what he wanted. He's taking care of the business with Fortinbras at the messengers. He's reminded everyone of importance in his chamber here, that him marrying Gertrude was coming from the advisors who, therefore that legitimizes it. So yeah, smiling to my heart and grace whereof no drunken health that Denmark drinks today, but the great cannon to the clouds shall tell, and the kings rouse the heavens shall brew it. Again, re-speaking earthly thunder. Basically, he's saying, let's go and party. Okay, taking care of business, everything's good. I handled that well. Let's go and drink. Okay, drinks. So everyone leaves but Hamlet. Now we get the first of quite a few soliloquies. All right. Now the soliloquy is when the character, in this case Hamlet, is alone on stage. And what happens here in a soliloquy, and we're going to see some of the most famous soliloquies in the history of theater are in this play. And this is the first one that we have with Hamlet. And this is an opportunity for us as an audience, and this is the purpose of the soliloquy, to really get into the mind of the speaker. Because most people don't walk around talking to themselves. But in theater, this is what is necessary for us to know what's going on in his mind. Again, unlike fiction, where we have a narrator who would tell us this stuff, this is how we are to learn about what's going on in Hamlet's mind. And it's important to remember another difference between the way we learn about Hamlet's mind as opposed to in fiction is it's revealed to us through a semblance, in any case, and usually much more than that, of dialogue, of the spoken word, as opposed to the written word, which can be very different. Okay? Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt. Now, I believe, because this is one of those that I brought up about the changing of words. This is one of the more not controversial, but most studied and analyzed. Different editions of the play have either solid, which I have here up on the screen, or as we have in our book, sullied. Okay, so if it's sullied, it does change the sense. All right. I don't want to dwell on this too much because this gets into very particular ways of analyzing and engaging with the text. I have to bring it up because in your edition it has sullied. Sullied, if something is sullied, dirtied in some way. This one was solid. Either one could work, but the solid seems to work better with the concept of melting. But what is he talking about either way? That this too solid, in this case, flesh, would melt. Oh, that this body I'm in, whether it's a solid or whether it's sullied, would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. So again, try to envision this on stage. It's Hamlet by himself. After this encounter with the king and his mother and everyone else, now reflecting, and he goes, oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. That my body would turn into dew. That this corporeal nature of flesh and bones could be as ephemeral as dew. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter. Or, right, so he's ruminating, he's thinking. Or that the everlasting God, Everlasting is God here. Or that or God had not fixed his canon, had not made it illegal, had not made it a sin against self-slaughter. Oh, or that if God or religion hadn't said it's a sin to kill myself. He's contemplating suicide. Oh God, how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. This is one very melancholy guy, right? Stale, weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable. All the uses of this world. Fie on it. Oh, fie, 'tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed. This world is an unweeded garden. It's gone to seed. The weeds are taking over, right? So now we're introduced to this garden metaphor, symbol of sorts. We're going to be seeing this popping up. And this is describing the world in which he lives, as a garden, but an unweeded garden. Yeah, not a garden that's been properly taken care of. The weeds have been allowed to grow. And the weeds, anyone who's done gardening knows that if you don't check the weeds take over the garden and dominate it. That grows just things rank and gross. Note the language, rank, gross in nature. Okay, so he's talking, this nature relates, of course, to the garden. In this nature, things are gross and rank. Possess it merely, that it should come to this. Right, so we're going, okay, we know that you're melancholy, and we saw you, in your little argument with the mother, and then the king berating you for, this over grieving and so on. But is that all there is, right? And here we're going to find out, no, there's much more to Hamlet that speaks to his melancholic demeanor. That it should come to this, but 2 months dead. Nay, not so much, not even 2 months since his father has been dead. So excellent a king, his father, that was to this Hyperion to a satyr. Okay, so your book, I'm sure, probably covers this, but he's basically comparing his father as king to the present king, his uncle. And Hyperion, right, as a comparison, right, Titan god of light. My father was a Titan god. And a satyr, of course, is a half human, half beast. It's a monster. Making this comparison, so loving to my mother that he might not beteem the winds of heaven, visit her face so roughly. Heaven and earth must I remember. Very important here. Must I remember? Almost as if, I don't want to be thinking about this, but I can't help it. This is the way Hamlet's mind works. He can't let go. He to the point of obsession. And he is grappling now with this situation. Right? Those of you who know the play, who've read the play, we know that, in fact, spoiler alert, everyone, we know that Claudius, the king, actually killed Hamlet's father. But we don't know this at this point. Hamlet doesn't know this at this point, right? Because Hamlet hasn't met the ghost yet, which is going to reveal this fact to him. Okay, what we have here is an indication of how Hamlet's mind works. And here he can't let go, not just over, he doesn't know, that's where I was going with it. He doesn't know that his father was murdered. That's not what he is focusing on here. Must I remember why she would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on? He's struggling with the idea that his mother so quickly after his father's death went with Claudius. Okay, yet within a month, here, let me not think of it. I don't want to think of this, but I can't help it. Within a month, she was with her dead husband's brother. And this is driving Hamlet crazy. Let me not think on it. One of the more famous lines from the play, frailty, thy name is woman. Now we're going to see this element of misogyny coming out of Hamlet. Okay, he's now classifying all women. They're all frail, weak. And we'll talk more about that because we see in his exchanges with Ophelia and further exchanges with his mother. In this case, so we can read it as he is just so distraught over this idea of his mother's seemingly, improper behavior. You didn't mourn long enough. Did you really love my father? How could you so quick? Was it? Was it because now he's the king, so you're just going to go with whoever the king is? You can't go more than a month without having a partner. All these things, right? A little month, or ere those shoes were old with which she followed my poor father's body. Okay, so a little month from the time that the shoes that you wore to the funeral. Okay, like nightly, all tears. You were crying, you were mourning, but then in less than a month, why even she, oh God, a beast that wants discourse of reason would have mourned longer. A beast, a non-human entity would have mourned longer for the death of her husband than you did. Married with mine uncle, my father's brother, and no more like my father than I to Hercules. So again, how could you so quickly, you didn't mourn long enough, and then you married my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I am to Hercules. It's self-depreciation here, right? He's saying, I'm nothing like Hercules, and my uncle, who's now king, is nothing in comparison to the greatness of my father, as I can't be compared to Hercules. Okay, and we saw this again with the Hyperion and the Satyr comparison up there. Within a month, ere yet the salt of most unrighteous tears had left the flushing of her galled eyes, she married. Oh, most wicked speed to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets. Okay, which goes back to what we were talking about earlier, how this would have been not just by Hamlet, but by society for the most part as a form of incest. That was your brother-in-law, right? And so he brings up again to emphasize his struggle with the situation, but it also brings us back to what was being said when Claudius tries to justify that by saying the advisor said it's okay. It is not, nor it cannot come to good, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. Okay, so this whole soliloquy here, we learned so much about what is truly troubling Hamlet. We learned that Hamlet is an extraordinarily deep thinker. We know that he goes to college, so he's intelligent. And we see this in his references here and comparisons. And he is struggling. He does not like his uncle. He misses his father. He is furious at his mother. But more so, these are just manifestations of a much deeper sense of despair that we certainly are exposed to here when he's contemplating suicide. Okay? So that's our introduction to the character of Hamlet. And then after this soliloquy, enter Horatio, Marcellus, and Bernardo. We know who they are. They were the ones who saw the ghost in the previous scene. And hail to your lordship. And Hamlet says, I am glad to see you well, Horatio, or do I forget myself? So it tells us a bit about because Horatio and the relationship between Horatio and Hamlet becomes very important. But here what we're noticing is Horatio, or do I forget myself? He's not even, I know you, it's Horatio, right? So they have a relationship of sorts, but it's not at this point, deeply involved because he's not even sure. It's Horatio, right? I want to be sure I got that. Yeah. And Horatio, the same, my lord, and your poor servant ever. Well, remember, Hamlet, was the king's son, and now is the king's nephew, or as the king likes to say, still his son, even though it's a different king. Hamlet's well entrenched in the hierarchy of this political and state kingly environment. All right, so that's why we get "and your poor servant ever," because Horatio's not an elite in this hierarchy. Sir, my good friend, I'll change that name with you. And what make you from Wittenberg, Horatio, Marcellus? Well, so does that tell us that Horatio goes to Wittenberg as well? So suggesting, and we know that Horatio's a scholar, that's where Hamlet and Horatio know each other from, is from the college. I'm very glad to see you. Good evening, sir. But what in faith make you from Wittenberg? And Horatio's a truant disposition, my good lord. Why are you here? Why aren't you at Wittenberg? Is what Hamlet's asking Horatio. I would not hear your enemy say so, nor shall you do my ear that violence to make it truster of your own report against yourself. I know you are no truant, right? Because he says a truant disposition, like he's supposed to be at school. He's truancy. He's ducking his classes. I know you're no truant, but what is your affair in Elsinore? Why are you actually here? We'll teach you to drink deep ere you depart. Another reference to the drinking. We saw that King Claudius, after his big meeting there, went off, now we're going to go party, emphasized the drinking. And it does play a big role here. You'll see how this keeps coming back. And he's saying, well, why are you really here in Elsinore? We'll teach you how to drink real well before you depart. And Horatio says, well, my lord, I came to see your father's funeral. Okay? And Hamlet goes, I prithee do not mock me, fellow student. I think it was to see my mother's wedding. Okay, don't play games with me. You came to my father's funeral, but you really had to be here to see my mother's wedding. And we know how Hamlet feels about the mother's wedding. Indeed, my lord, it followed hard upon. Well, yeah, initially came here, say probably the same thing with Laertes. Initially came for that funeral, but things happened so quickly, we had to stick around. No point in going all the way back and coming back again for the wedding and the coronation. Thrift, Horatio, the funeral baked meats did coldly furnish forth the marriage tables. The same food that we could have used at the funeral would have still been, wouldn't have gone bad by the time we had the wedding. Again, he's playing with it, not in the same melancholic manner he did in the soliloquy, because now he's with people and Horatio. So it's a lighter bit of banter, but it's still there, right? Would I had met my dearest foe in heaven, or ever I had seen that day, Horatio, my father. Methinks I see my father. Okay, now again, this is, he doesn't know anything about what Horatio has seen. All right. So he's saying it, in a again, not nearly as deeply melancholic state as he was in the soliloquy or even in the chamber with the king. But he's saying, methinks I see my father. He's talking about his father, but he says it in a way, methinks I see it. And Horatio's response, where, my lord? Like what, so you can see how that can play out on the stage, because Horatio has seen his father too recently, after his father's been dead, the night before. And so the way it's done here, where my lord, you could just see Horatio going, what, is the ghost back? Could be. And it's again, a lot of this we have to figure out ourselves. What are the possibilities here? And of course, Hamlet says, no, in my mind's eye, Horatio. And this opens the door for Horatio to reveal the purpose of his visit, to see Hamlet right now. I saw him once. He was a goodly king. He was a man, take him for all in all. I shall not look upon his like again. And here Horatio brings it out. My lord, I think I saw him yesternight. Saw who? My lord, the king, your father. The king, my father, season your admiration for a while with an attentive ear, till I may deliver upon the witness of these gentlemen this marvel to you. All right, because you can see Hamlet going, you saw my father. You saw my father. And Horatio goes, cool down. Hear me out. Hear me out. Let me explain to you what I'm talking about, all right, before you react. And Hamlet goes, for God's love, let me hear. And here he recounts what happened the night before, right? So him and Marcellus and Bernardo on the watch, and talks about the figure like your father, armed in point exactly. Remember, we saw this word before, foot to head. Walk by. Okay. It's just, again, I don't have to go through this. He's recounting what they had seen. Stand dumb, speak to them. This to me in dreadful secrecy in part they did, and I with them the third night kept the watch, whereas they had delivered both in time form of the thing, each word made true and good. So these guys, okay, came to me and said, we've seen this, we want to prove it to you. I doubted them, but when they brought me up there, it was made true and good. The apparition comes. I knew your father. These hands are not more like. But where was this? Asked Hamlet, my lord, upon the platform where we watch. Did you not speak to it? Notice right away the idea. What does it have to say? The ghost. The thinking is the ghost must be here for a reason. And Horatio says, yeah, I tried, but he didn't answer. But an answer made none. And did address itself emotional, like as it wanted to speak, but then remember, this is just again recounting what we already saw, but then the morning came, and in the morning it vanished. And Hamlet, 'tis very strange. As I do live, my honored lord, 'tis true, and we did think it writ down in our duty. Oops. In the duty, remember, we're looking at the sense of duty to let you know. It was our duty to let you know. And it's important. Keep it in mind. We're going to unpack the concept of duty, and we've touched on it in previous plays that we've looked at, but keep it in mind and see how that unfolds here. Indeed, but this troubles me. Are you on the watch tonight? We do, my lord. And Hamlet goes, armed, you say? And both of them, armed, my lord, from top to toe, my lord, from head to foot. Then saw you not his face? And Horatio says, yes, my lord. He wore his beaver, that's his helmet, the covering of the helmet. He wore his beaver up. What looked he frowningly? Was he frowning? A countenance, a look more in sorrow than in anger. This is very important here, right? So he's asking, you saw my father's face as a ghost? Yes. And he looked angry, he was frowning. He looked more sad than angry. Pale or red? No, very pale. And fixed his eyes upon you most constantly. I would I had been there. It would have much amazed you. Very like, stayed it long, right? He was trying to get the information. While one with moderate haste might tell 100, longer. Not when I saw it. So again, this is a little thing I wanted to highlight here. How long did it stay? And Horatio says, with one might moderate haste might tell 100. It wasn't that long. And Marcellus and Bernardo together go, no, it's longer. And Horatio goes, no, not when I saw it. Seeing is believing. You guys can say when you saw it, it was there for much longer. Okay, but he asked me what I saw, and I will not embellish. And this speaks to Horatio's character. He's very pragmatic. Talked about this in the first video. All right, no, not when I saw it. Okay, his beard was grizzled, sable silvered. Hamlet goes on. I will watch tonight, and perchance 'twill walk again. I warrant you it will. If it assume my noble father's person, I'll speak to it, though hell itself should gape and bid me hold my peace. I must speak to this. This must be a reason. Right? And he trusts Horatio. And one of the reasons he trusts Horatio is because Horatio is pragmatic, a fellow student, not prone to lying. Right? He has this status as a scholar. I pray you all, if you have hitherto concealed this sight, let it be tenable in your silence still. Don't talk about this. Right? This is what Hamlet's telling them. Don't tell anyone else. And whatsoever else shall happen tonight, give it an understanding, but no tongue. I will requite quite your loves. So fare you well upon the platform twixt 11 and 12. I'll visit you. Okay? So he said, okay, I'm going to come, and I want to see this for myself. They all say, our duty to your honor. Okay? Hamlet, your loves as mine to you, farewell. They all leave, except for Hamlet, who reflects, my father's spirit in arms. That's, remember, he asked earlier, was he really armed? Right? He's trying to understand what is the significance of his father coming back, and in what manner did he come back, right? Is he coming back dressed for war, which is what he's finding out he is, because he's armed and he's wearing his armor. All is not well. I doubt some foul play would the night work come. Till then, sit still, my soul, foul deeds will rise, though all the earth overwhelm them to men's eyes. Okay. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to do, I'll do another video in the next day or two on the final scenes of this act. It is meticulous, but you see how long it took just to go through these first two scenes. It'll go quicker in other scenes, and others it'll be need just as much time. So I'm going to be continuing with these videos. For class tomorrow, I want to get your feedback. I'll go over these to some extent again, but I'll refer you to the video, since that's where it's gone through in detail. And we'll, in class tomorrow, start touching on these scenes. And if my concern is, I would say we could just do the next scenes and finish the act in the virtual classroom tomorrow, and then I can post that. But there have been issues with me being able to convert these Zoom videos into an MP4 file for posting. So that's how we're going to approach it. If we can, we'll go through those other scenes. Do try to watch this video. You should have read it by now, so I will go back and forth a bit. And we'll see how that goes tomorrow. And you should already have finished Act 1, hopefully, ideally, and start getting towards Act 2. This is a long play. Okay, we still have 4 or 5 weeks, so we're in good shape. But it is to your advantage to finish the play as soon as possible, so that when we go over Acts 3, 4, and 5, you will already be familiar with the end. Will really help you to have a better grasp of what we're talking about as we build towards that end, and give you an opportunity to reread sections. All right, and with a play like this, like Hamlet, it really is to your advantage to read it as many times as you can. All right. I hope everyone is doing well. Please, everyone, stay safe. We have our class tomorrow afternoon. I hope to see you all there, and we'll take it from there. Okay.